Good afternoon, and welcome to Race Matters. Today we're going to be talking about white privilege. White privilege has nothing to do with how much wealth or income or social class a person might have. It simply is defined as things you don't have to worry about because your skin is white. Nobody is saying white people don't work hard. Nobody is saying white people don't have hardships. What I am saying is that a white person in this country who has a horrible living situation can always find solace in the fact that they are not black. This means whiteness has value. Here are some things that you don't have to do because of white privilege. You don't have to talk to your kids about how to deal with being pulled over by the police. You don't have to explain you do have to explain black on black crime of 93%, but you don't have to explain white on white crime of 84%. When a white person commits the exact same crime as a black person and the penalty is much less severe than for the white person, I can go on and on with the things that are out there. But this is what I'm talking about when I say white privilege. I'm not trying to say that you didn't work hard or you're not a good person or you just walked around with your hand out. No, you just have some advantages because your skin is white. Simple. You have some advantages. And man, most white people I know, once you explain it to them, see that. I've had some people that bucked that and thought, wait a minute, I'm not privileged because they didn't understand what was being said. They're good white people and they want to know. They want to know what's going on. And the first time I said that, they were offended. Like, wait a minute. I don't have white privilege. And I'm like, well, tell me what you understand white privilege to be. Well, hey, I'm a hardworking person and I do this and I do that and I earn this and I earn that and I have a job and I'm not on welfare. Oh, okay. That's not what I'm talking about. And so I just told you what I'm telling you white privilege is. That again, when was the last time as a white person that you had to sit your kids down and say, here's how you act if you're pulled over by the police. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. We want you to come home alive. So please do what we're telling you to do. You have to have that conversation whether you have boys or girls. I had that conversation with my girls. I don't have any boys. I have friends who have boys and my version, my talk was like maybe 5 minutes with my girls. The talk with the boys is like an hour. So it's just a reality of being black. You have to talk about that. I mean, you don't have to talk about it, but you'd not be a very good parent in today's day and age if you did not let your kid know that this is something you're going to face, and you got to talk about it. You got to talk about. I mean, I have a friend of mine, and his wife makes a six-figure salary, and he had a state government job, and he made a very good salary, and they are very well-respected people. And they have 3 boys. And they live in a nice neighborhood. And yet, she told me her boys have been stopped countless number of times in their own neighborhood. One time, one of her kids was stopped in front of his house. He was in his yard, and the cop pulled up. And they have nice cars, and so, you get questions like, is this your car? Why are you driving it? What are you doing here? Why are you in this neighborhood? Because I live here. As if a black person is not supposed to live in a nice neighborhood. Now, this is not every police officer. Every police officer does not do this, and I'm never going to say that. But there are some that do. And there are more of them that do than should be. That's just not a line of questioning that should be happening to somebody. Somebody should not be, I don't care what color they are, they should not be harassed and pulled over, asked dumb questions like, why are you in this neighborhood? It is not against the law to be in a nice neighborhood. It's not against the law. If I want to drive to Beverly Hills and go down Rodeo Drive, that's not against the law. If I want to go to the nicest community out there, it's not against the law, unless it's a gated community. Okay, then I can't go in. But come on. This is ridiculous that this is happening so many times. But it does happen. So I think you've got to understand that. Now, this is controversial that I'm going to bring up, but I'm sorry. I got to bring this up because we didn't talk about it long enough. It happened. It was in the news for like a week, and then we just stopped talking about it, and we don't talk about it anymore. And I hate that. I hate the fact that when things come up that are learning opportunities, that are aha moments, that we run and we don't want to talk. I'm not a runner. I'm not a slave, so I don't run. Okay, I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk because I think we got to talk about these things. So let me give you a living example, the best living example that I can think of that's recent of white privilege. That would be January 6th, 2021. Right after the presidential election, and there were a mob of white people that were very angry for lots of reasons. And you saw what happened on January 6th. Now, I'm going to juxtapose that to what happened just a couple of, I think it was days earlier, maybe it was weeks, but a couple of days earlier with Black Lives Matter. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I endorse everything Black Lives Matter does, because I don't endorse everything anyone does. But I just believe in the phrase Black Lives Matter. I believe that's a good phrase. I believe we should say that because I think we do matter. So anyway, I look at the Black Lives Matter, and when they had their peaceful protest, okay, because that's what it was. And I looked at that, and I remember that time. I remember that they had a curfew during that time. I think it was 7 o'clock or whatever the time was. And I remember once it hit 7 o'clock, the police were aggressively enforcing that curfew. Like, get off the street, get out of here. You're not supposed to be on the street. I mean, it was pretty aggressive. And I remember we had the National Guard out there, because anytime you say the word black, that evokes fear in lots of people. And so how do you deal with fear? Force. So let's bring out the National Guard to stop a peaceful protest. Because, it's black people. So you just never know. You just never know what they might do. Tell me what we've done in history. No, that's a whole other question. Yeah, we burned up a few liquor stores and, set a few things on fire. Okay. All right. But, I mean, I just think we've got to look at this and see and break it down. We had a pretty aggressive police force out there during the Black Lives Matter protest. And not only that, but we had the president say some pretty aggressively strong things toward that group. And they weren't positive. You go back and listen to them. I'm not going to repeat them. But he said that. And then here comes January 6th. And we have people with Confederate flags, with Nazi flags and other types of paraphernalia out there. And where's the police presence? And they publicize, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to do this. Where was the National Guard? Nowhere to be found. You had a very small presence. Why? Because, of course, these are white people. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to get out of control. We don't have to be ready for them. We're not scared of them. So we'll just have minimal police. And guys, I'm sorry. Most, not all, but most black people, you know what we said? And the question that you still haven't answered? If that was us, switch those situations around. If that was us, what would have happened? I'll tell you what would have happened. There would have been blood at the Capitol building. Blood at the Capitol building. Nobody would have been sitting there scared to shoot. Nobody would have been sitting there letting people come through the door and nobody doing anything about it. That wouldn't have happened if they were black people. And so we look at that and we go, come on, guys. How do you not see this privilege? One group just a couple of days before, and you saw how they were treated. And then here comes this situation, and you see how these white people were. Both of them had things that they wanted to say. Both of them were probably had some very angry people in their groups. But one group was treated with some pretty strong contempt, and the other group got to the point where they stormed the Capitol building. Who does that? Who storms the Capitol building? Who goes into the state? Who? And literally, these guys had like tie hang. I mean, they were going in there to get people. They were just. This wasn't a sightseeing tour. These guys were going. And this was planned out. And I'm not listening to the hearings now because I'm at work, so I don't know all that's going on with the hearings. But this was planned. It was well planned, and these guys were able to do things that there's just no way. I can't see that happening with black people. Even if we wanted to, even if we wanted to go in, if we told you, hey, we're going to this place and we're coming, they would be ready for us. They would be ready for us. Why weren't they ready for these guys? I can only answer that with two words: white privilege. I'm sorry, guys, but I can't find a better example than that to show you that white privilege does exist. And I'm not trying to put any white person down. I'm not trying to make any white person look bad. But if you don't think you have privilege in this country, if you think we're playing on a level playing field and everything's even and you've never received there's nothing out there that's better for you, you don't know the history of this country. You don't know how this country was built. You haven't read what the founding fathers said. You've definitely not read what the Southern people during the Civil War, you definitely didn't read what those guys said. Jefferson Davis and these kind of guys. You certainly didn't read what because they didn't beat around the bush. They said exactly what they believed. You didn't even read stuff from Abraham Lincoln because these guys said it. Black people are inferior. This country's for us, meaning white people, and those guys are just here to do our work. And they're never to be equal with us, and they're never to share the privileges that we have, like getting free land in 1862. They're not supposed to get that. They are the labor. They don't get free labor. They are the labor. And so, guys, understand that. Don't get angry. Don't get upset. But that privilege is out there. And again, if you really want to know and you don't want to just argue, go find some black people and talk to them and say, tell me how you felt during that time period. What did you see? And learn. And not every black person thinks the same. I'm not saying that. But I can point you in the right direction, if you're not sure where to go. But I promise you, there are black people that don't want to talk about this, and they're just like white people. They won't say anything. They're just not going to talk. I'm not one of those people, as you can see. But there are people out there that will tell you, yeah, this is how I saw that. And I don't know what else to tell you guys. This is something that exists, and it's not something that you created. It's not your fault. I'm not blaming you for it, but it is there. And the only time I'm going to have a problem is when you don't recognize it and you don't want to acknowledge that it's there, because it is. I'm sorry. I hope you've learned something today. Thank you for listening.